right, so we are recording. Now, previously in this series we've seen, so this is actually AWS Cloud Security, and we are at the section of IAM. So we've done IAM enumeration, we've also done overly permissive permissions and misconfigured trust policy. Now we're doing the dangerous policy combination. So it's already started, and I also have the credentials over here, and I've installed AWS on Windows, so I don't have to actually go into Kali Linux. I've set up these. I've set up the AWS with these. So what you do is AWS configure, and then you paste the access key over here. As you can see, it's pasted. It's already there. Then you paste the secret key, which was already there, XBNS. Then default region name US East 1, which is there. So default, we can just copy that one more time. So that, and enter, and there you have it. That's how you configure AWS. Now, this dangerous policy combination is an interesting challenge. So as I've said previously, the three big players when it comes to cloud infrastructure are AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. These are the big cloud providers, and as of right now, AttackDefense Labs has only labs for AWS. I really hope that they're gonna add labs for the other two providers, because I don't know, AWS, when it comes to training as a cybersecurity professional, they provide all sorts of training for all colors, and in this case I would say this is mostly, not necessarily, if I come to think of it, maybe it's not only for blue teamers, because you might think this is more like a blue teamer, but this is also blue team and red team, so it's a combo, because as a blue team you actually learn how to configure policies correctly in this case, and as a red team or an attacker, you actually learn how to attack or what to look for when it comes to AWS infrastructure and IAM, identity and access management. Now what we have here is I've said that I enjoy the AttackDefense Labs because they are realistic and they are not CTF-ish, which is something that I don't like. I hate CTFs. So yeah, as more realistic than this is bug bounty hunting. So that's the ultimate level of reality, when you're actually getting paid or getting some sort of incentivization for your efforts. Now, to train, what do we have here? This challenge is as follows. Sometimes, and of course I took the time to download the lab manual, and we also have the walkthrough here. So this is the walkthrough. I'm not actually gonna pretend that, ooh, I'm so smart and I'm gonna do this in all by myself. No, we're actually gonna look alongside the walkthrough, because I want to keep this as short as possible. I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time either. So for more information, of course, you can go into the docs AWS Amazon.com to actually look into the full documentation. Now, that being said, let's read what we have to do. Sometimes, let me make sure that we're recording. 4 minutes, so time flies when you're having fun. Sometimes one policy itself might not be sufficient to perform a privilege operation. However, multiple policies can allow an IAM user to perform a chain of operations, which ultimately leads to privilege escalation on the AWS account. Our objective is to leverage the policies attached to the student and attain administrative privileges on the AWS account. So in this case, from my understanding, it is not only one policy, but a combination of policies that actually leads to attaining administrative privileges. So a combination of misconfigured policies. You can think of it probably like this. When you're actually doing privilege escalation on a Linux system, it is a series of multiple misconfigurations and probably weaknesses or vulnerabilities within the system or the software that runs on the system that actually leads to privilege escalation and entire system takeover. Now, in this case, what do we have to do? So since I've configured AWS, first we probably need to list, so let's look into the lab. So they've done the configure stuff. First, we have to list the policies attached to the student user. So let's do it like this. So I can just copy this because I'm learning as we speak. So AWS IAM list attached user policies, and then we need to specify the username student. And then we have a read-only access policy, which doesn't allow us too much information. So we have attached user policies. And then there are also inline policies. So for example, let's actually, with this IAM read-only policy, as it says here, try creating a new user Bob. So AWS IAM Identity and Access Management, create user, and then we specify the username Bob. It says an error occurred. We have access denied because we only have read-only access. Alright, now, as I said, we have the list attached user policies, and we also have inline user policies. Get information about the user's inline policies. And to actually understand the difference between the attached policies and the inline policies, definitely look into the documentation here. So an IAM user, so list attached policies, lists all managed policies that are attached to the specified user. But an IAM user can also have inline policies. So these are two different types of policies that an IAM user can have. Now, we list the inline policies. List user policies. So first was list attached user policies, then we have the inline policies. Username student. So we have another policy which is called Terraform. Now let's copy that and then get the user policy, get information about this policy. AWS IAM, get user policy, username, student, and then policy name. We paste the policy name from here, Terraform. And here's what the policy can do. Assume role. So this policy gives the student the ability to assume the role, and it allows it to adder or attacher. Now let's see what exactly these are, what adder and attacher is. So, check policies attached to adder role. Now we look into the role policies. So as of right now, we looked into the user policies, but now we have to look into what this role can do. So that's why we need to do AWS IAM list role policies, then role name adder. We could also specify the role name attacher. So this role policy allows to add user. Alright, that's interesting. So that's what we actually did. List role policy role adder. Now if we do the get role policy, so we list it, but now we do the get role policy, and then we do the role name adder, policy name, add user. It's gonna tell us, so I probably did something wrong. Get role policy without the minus in front. So what does this add user policy allow us to do? Add user to group. Allow. So it allows us to add user to group printers. It's very specific. So it allows us to add user to the group printers. Role policy says that role adder has permission to add any user to the printers group. Assume adder role with the student user. So this is how we sort of like impersonate or assume the role. AWS STS. I can't remember what STS stood for. What was STS? What did STS stood for? Security Token Service? Probably. The Security Token Service. Okay, so STS, assume role ARN, we have to specify the role ARN, which was this one over here. So role ARN, assume role ARN, we paste the role, and then we need to specify a role session name. Adder test. We're gonna just blindly follow the walkthrough. And then we are given credentials. Make a note of the credentials and tokens. Set the access key ID, secret access key, and session token in environment variables. Now this might be tricky because I'm not sure if I can do that in as easily in Windows as I can do in Linux. So that's probably why we're just gonna look into the because I'm not gonna fire up my Kali Linux over here. So you'd have to actually export the access key ID, the secret access key, and the session token to the environment variables, and that's how you do it in Kali Linux. And then what you would do is since these are in the environment variables, when you run this command, add user to group name printers, username student, so you're gonna add yourself to the printers group. This is probably gonna run correctly. And then what they actually do is they unset those environment variables and list a group for the student user, list group for user, username student, and then it also says that the student is in the printers group. So successfully added student to the printers group. Check the policies attached to the attached role and check the role policy document. So you can also look into the role into the where was it? Check the policies attached to the attached role and check the role policy document. I think we can do that. So we can look into attacher, attach policy, and then we can look into again in this case attacher and policy name attach policy. Let's see what this is going to allow us to do. Probably did something wrong again. Yeah, so this minus here. Attach group policy. So it allows us to attach group policy. Now in this case, I assume that we are going to attach a group policy to the printers group, and that policy would sort of like be some sort of an administrative policy. Let's see. Role policy says that the role attacher has permission to attach any policy to the printers group. Now in this case, identify the ARN of the administrator access policy. So in this case, what we can do, we can look into AWS IAM, and in this case we're going to list all the policies, and then I cannot grep in Windows, I cannot grep for administrator access. Let's see. Of course you cannot, I don't think grep doesn't work in Windows. Grep is not recognized. What if I am going into Bash? Do I still have access to AWS? Of course not. Okay, now I'm gonna trust them on this one. So we'll look into the ARN for the administrator access. So this is the policy name, administrator access. And this is really nice because in this case, what we did, so let me actually do a notepad here. So what we did, one, was to leverage the add user policy to add student to the printers group. Then we leveraged, so in this case, because by default, let's say 0 here, by default student user has only read-only access for the attached policies. Now for the inline policies on AWS, we had the adder and the attacher. The adder and the attacher. The adder allows us to add whatever user to the printers group, to add the user to the printers group, and for that we had the credentials that you've seen. So we set the credentials into env, so into the path, into the environment variables. Then what we will leverage the attacher policy to attach administrative access to the printers group. This is really ingenious. So we actually chain multiple misconfigurations here. So it's really, this is a really nice laboratory. All right, so we'll list the policies, we take the IRN, now we assume the attacher role, we are being given credentials, we then set these credentials into the environment variables, okay, and then what we do is attach group policy to printers, and we give printers administrator access. Since the user student is in the printers group, the student is going to be able to finally probably create a new user. So list group policies, it has administrator access, successfully attached administrator access to printers group. Now try creating a new user Bob to verify administrator access, and in this case the user was created successfully. All right, now My mistake here was that I assumed I would be able to run the commands in Windows here, but I wanted to take a shortcut. Now, in future videos, I'll probably just fire up my Kali Linux and will do things seamlessly. So this was an interesting lab, and I hope you learn as much as I did from it.